So, Mark, I think the burning question is, actually, do you know what? We're going to come to the burning question, which is what you're doing with this boat. But I think let's rewind very slightly. Where does your boating start for you?
Not far off this.
Really? Okay.
Not far off. We got the chance back in New Zealand about 5 years ago to have a quarter share in a salt house. And they're a New Zealand built boat, displacement, and it was 60 feet.
Right, that's a big boat to
It
start off
was
with.
it was a big boat.
Yeah.
Single screw.
Yeah.
No bow thruster or stern thruster.
Okay, well that is properly challenging.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And in New Zealand we get a lot of wind, so you had to kind of attack the wharf. But hey, I made mistakes, but the guy that owned the 3/4 basically never used it. So it was like our own boat.
Brilliant.
And he just said, mate, go out and enjoy it.
Fantastic.
So it's in the Marlborough Sounds, and the Marlborough Sounds are very sheltered waters generally. So it is a great place if you're going to learn.
Yeah.
But that was really my boating experience. Used to do a lot of whitewater canoeing when I was a young lad.
Yeah.
You know, so I'm familiar with the water, and I was a commercial pilot for my career.
Okay, and that's flying, not pilot as in boats.
No, no. So it was flying. So the navigation, I found myself in fog a while. It just doesn't worry me. I'm happy with radar.
Yeah.
But learning about the water, that's been the big lesson.
Yeah, absolutely. But you couldn't have a more demanding tutor than a 60-foot single screw with no thruster. If you can handle that, you can handle anything.
I found this boat really easy to manoeuvre. Doesn't mean you don't make mistakes.
No, of course.
But it very
Twin engines, bow thruster, stern thruster?
No, not a stern thruster.
No, just a bow.
You don't need the stern thruster.
You don't.
You know, you can walk sideways. You have to use the bow thruster, but you can definitely walk sideways in it.
Yeah.
I've been super lucky because we started out in the Med, and of course everyone's a bit nervous about Med mooring. Well, Med mooring I just absolutely love.
Right.
I've anchored 287 days out of the last 365.
Wow. Okay. That's
so
interesting.
Anchoring, and back home we anchor all the time.
Yeah.
I'm really comfortable and happy anchoring. I haven't done a lot on a standard marina, and so far, I don't think once I've had a really off pier wind.
Right. Okay. Yeah.
So I'd get nervous if that, you know, like I mean, that would be what would that I haven't got a lot of experience in.
No.
So,
but the one advantage with an off berth wind is that if it does start to go wrong, you just stop and it will just take you away. Yeah. You know, so it's a tricky manoeuvre, but it's not a dangerous manoeuvre.
No, and it'll be, you know, hopefully my single screw experience will come in there. You know, you just need to attack, if that's the right word, with the pier with a bit more energy, so you can keep your steerage and get where you want to get. And of course, once you've got a line attached, you're all right.
Yeah, totally. Okay, so that's your start, and then you moved on to this one.
Yes.
So then the big question is, why Nordhavn? And why this Nordhavn?
Well, I just think the lines of a Nordhavn are beautiful. You know, because I don't know what it's about, cars, planes, well, houses, if you like, as well.
Yeah.
But certainly boats. You know, a lot of it's whether you're attracted to how it looks.
Sure.
You know, right or wrong.
Yeah.
And
a bit like ladies.
Yeah, I guess so.
Yeah. See?
Yeah. It's that initial, you know.
Yeah, absolutely.
You write a V or something. Yeah. You know
exactly.
I mean? Yeah.
Then you work out whether you like the rest of it.
Yeah, I guess so.
So what is it about the lines of the boat that you like?
I don't know. I look at Celine.
Yeah.
And it just feels to me like there's something a bit sharp about the way that the roof of the pilot house meets the forward windows.
Yeah.
Whereas the Nordhavn, it curves over beautifully, and the way the windows wrap round at the edges. I always feel the Flemings are a little bit high in the bow for me and a bit sharp, but I mean that's semi-planing, so it is a bit different. Yeah. I love the fact that we go so slow in the Nordhavn. Right. You know, just that, although things can still happen quite quickly, but you know, you just take your time, and it's, I don't know, I just think I think Nordhavns have beautiful lines, so I did love that. I flew with a chap once, and he said to me, mate, if you want a tug, the only tug to get's the Nordhavn. Right. And I looked at it and immediately liked it, so I just had it in my head. That's what it was going to be. Yeah, wow. Yeah. Fair enough. Did you look at other boats though before you pushed the button on this one? No, not really. You just said that's it. That's the goal for me. Yeah, we'd kind of made our mind up. Yeah. Yeah, and to be fair, we'd sort of thought that maybe about because the idea of bringing a boat halfway around the world was never there, although I've always been excited by that concept, by the adventure.
Yeah.
But that was certainly not an option. It was, we were looking for maybe 40 to 45 feet.
This is interesting. So, okay, so you didn't go, we want to go around the world in a boat, let's go and find a boat.
No.
You said, let's go and find a boat. Hey, we could go around the world with this.
No, not even that.
Okay, go on.
What happened was, we were looking at, I looked at a couple when I was doing a duty to Vancouver, and I went on a 40.
Right.
And because we'd had the share in the 60, it seemed very small.
Sure, okay.
So then I looked at a 52 in Dana Point.
Yeah, and these are all Nordhavns.
All Nordhavns. Yeah. And I just felt like we couldn't afford that.
Right.
So anyway, we were just looking generally, and then finally a 60-foot boat became available in Auckland, and Fiona had never been on a Nordhavn. So I rang James Leishman, the sales rep, and said to him, can we organise for Fiona to go up and have a look at it? I said, we're not going to buy it, but I want Fiona to see a Nordhavn because we're looking at a Nordhavn. And he said, oh, it's a bit awkward with COVID and that, the guy wants to be on the boat, so no, you probably can't.
Right.
He said, but we're just putting out a new boat, the 51, and I'd never heard of the 51.
Okay.
And he said the first 3 we do a really good deal on, and number 3 is still available.
Right.
And that just went, and he said also, they're being built in Turkey, you can pick it up there.
Right.
And then just the adventurous side of me just went, oh wow, a Nordhavn, and what, bring it back from, I mean, that was just like, you know, I was sold at that point.
That's fantastic.
Yeah. Yeah, so we signed up for number. I lost a very dear friend 2 years after he retired, and he just told me, he said, "You go and do it, mate.
Yeah.
Do it." He said, you know, and you know, you've got to.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we probably couldn't really afford this, but we really pushed ourselves.
Yeah.
And so we signed up for it, and here we are.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. Wow, that is incredible.
Yeah. Yeah.
That you might be able to hear in the background, that's a steam train.
It is.
Past, which is fantastic.
I got some drone of it.
Going
brilliant. Over the viaduct.
Yeah.
Just beyond, was it Diddersham?
No, it's this side. It's just beyond Nos.
Yeah.
It's between Nos and Diddersham.
Yeah. So I got some drone of it. Yeah.
Wow.
It was cool. Yeah.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
And so your adventure began. You set sail from Turkey on this boat. How long ago?
March 2024.
Okay.
So I mean, the idea was to basically spend that first season in the Med getting used to it.
Yeah.
And the insurance were happy about that, being in the Med,
you
know, because lower risk, I guess.
Yeah.
And yeah, we had to go home in August. Came back, and then Fiona left in November last year. She wasn't that keen on doing the winter thing.
Right.
And so then I came up, Sardinia, Corsica, over to Nice, down the coast, Gibraltar, and then up the Atlantic through the winter. And Guernsey and the south coast of England.
Wow. And that's mostly anchoring at each place that you go to?
Almost entirely.
That's incredible.
Yeah, I mean, we just, as a live aboard,
yeah,
on a daily rate,
yeah,
we just can't afford to go on a marina. I mean,
no,
it's like, for this boat, it's about £100 here.
Yeah.
You know, every night. So that's 700 quid a week.
Yeah, No.
We just can't do it.
Crazy money.
So the big thing for me is I'm always looking for where's the next place that I can anchor safely if the weather turns.
Yes.
And as long as I can find that, I'm happy to move on. Like here, I'll be happy here in almost any weather.
Of course.
It's
very sheltered here.
It's going to start getting harder going east.
Yep.
But there's a marina in Southampton's giving me a week.
Oh, really?
Yeah, if I do a bit of promotion for them on my channel.
Brilliant.
So,
that's good.
Nice. So I love to anchor, and it's very easy in the Med and coming up the Atlantic coast. Not as many places over here I've found.
Right.
Okay. Yeah. You know, some of the harbours just don't let you anchor.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you're basically just going ashore for food and fuel.
Yeah, and coffee.
Of course.
Yeah, and coffee.
Yeah.
Well, I love a coffee.
Yeah.
But look, people have sort of said to me, go and do this, go and do that. While you're there, you've got to get on the train and go to... My adventure is going along the coastlines around the world,
right,
and seeing beautiful coastal towns, and meeting neat people, and I haven't got time to go everywhere else.
No, of course.
And I don't like to get too far from the boat.
Yeah. Especially if it's an anchor.
Yeah. But I don't worry about anchoring because when you've done it so much,
you get confidence.
Well, my philosophy is if it's over 20 knots, I don't tend to leave the boat.
Right.
And then when I get on anchor, I'm either staying there for that night, or I'll sit around for 3 or 4 hours.
Yeah.
Just to be confident that I've set the anchor, that the swing's okay, and have a look at the weather. And then when I go, I don't take a drag circle or anything like that on my phone. My attitude is the insurance company's happy.
Yeah.
I'm not going to spend my whole time worrying about the boat. So I go.
Yeah.
And it's been fine.
It's always been there when you get back.
Yep. But I must admit, I do walk around corners sometimes, and I know I'm going to see the boat, and I think I want to see it there, not down there.
I've got 2 really good anchoring stories.
Yep.
One happened to a friend of mine called Jack Haynes, actually, who used to work for Motorboat and Yachting magazine, which I do some writing for. And Jack's father had, I think I'm right in saying, a Fairline Targa 30, it was either 34 or 38.
Oh, yeah, Targa. I like the Targa, actually.
Yeah, it was a Fairline Targa, not the Botnia Targa.
Ah, okay.
You know, the sports cruiser. So
right, not the Targa.
That's the Botnia Targa, I think.
Right. Okay. Yeah.
Anyway, they anchored this boat. They kept it in pool, and they had anchored it off a beach, just around the corner from Poole, or Studland, I think it was. And they went ashore and got an ice cream and everything else. And they're coming back, and they said, "Oh, look, there's a boat there, really close inshore. It's like our boat, you know." But it's a bit brave being that close in. As they got nearer, they realised it was their boat.
Yeah.
And what had happened was I shouldn't probably tell you this.
No, please do.
One of the anchor links had snapped, and the boat set itself free. But the funny thing about the story was the boat ended up on the beach. There was no harm done. It was absolutely fine because it was very gentle and everything else. But the beach it ended up on was a nudist beach. And there are all these guys helping them push this boat off, and they're trying to get the boat off and everything else. And there's all in the net.
Oh, that's hilarious! That's hilarious.
That's a great story.
Yeah.
And the other story which I really like was a guy who, when he was much younger, he was sort of in his teens, and he helped his father build a wooden boat. And they spent years building this beautiful wooden boat at home, and they kept it on a lake. And his father let him use it. And him and some pals went off camping on this boat, and they headed across the lake, and they anchored off of a beach, and they camped on the beach, and the beach had an offshore wind, and so they spent the night. Everything was fine, everything else. They were on the beach. When they woke up in the morning, the boat was gone, and he's like, "Oh my God, it's Dad's pride and joy. He spent years building this. Oh my God!" So he hitchhiked back round the lake to where his home, basically, because they lived on the lake. And his heart in his mouth, he said to his dad, "I'm really sorry," you know, and he thought, "This is going to be awful." And his dad said, "No, don't worry about it. It's fine, honestly." He said, "Come on, let's jump in the car." And they drove off, and he said, all that would happen is it would have drifted into deep water. It would just kept drifting.
Just keep drifting.
Until it got into shallow water on the other side of the lake, and then it'll anchor itself again.
Yeah,
and sure enough, they came around a headland, and there was the boat anchored quite happily on the other side of the lake where he left it.
Yeah.
That's fantastic.
Yeah. I've had up to 44 knots is the maximum I've seen on the plotter at anchor.
Of wind.
Yeah. So and the boat didn't move. What I get more nervous about is when you've got a changing tide and you're out here and everything's set beautifully.
Yeah.
And then it moves right across, so you know it's taken the chain with it.
Of course.
That it potentially unsets your anchor.
Yeah.
But I think we've only dragged once. And that was because we ended up getting very big swells coming through, and doing that and lifting
of course,
lifting it
it's
up.
a constant tugging on it, isn't it? Yeah.
But I'm really comfortable anchoring. Yeah, and I figure, I've 287 times, might be 8 now today.
Yeah.
If I had the wrong technique or the gear wasn't strong enough, I think it would have shown up. And it's the Ultra anchor. It sets beautifully. Yeah, it sets really well.
You know what? I've got an Ultra anchor on mine now.
Yep.
And it is an expensive anchor.
Yeah.
But it bloody works.
Yeah, it does. Yeah. It does. And I had the boat out of the water, and we checked the chain link. I did the calipers on the inside of it. Right down where the chain hadn't been used, and right up where it's been used, and it's still exactly the same. So it's not being stretched or anything. But I mean, you're absolutely right. That's probably your biggest threat is just pure and simply a link breaking.
Yeah. I wish I hadn't mentioned it now because we'd be lying in bed.
I know. Well, it's 10 mil.
Yeah.
I'd like to have seen 12. I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, because boats considerably lighter have got 10 mil as well. Like the 41's got 10 mil.
Okay.
And that weighs half what this weighs.
Yeah.
But I've looked at it, and the 10 is sufficient for 34 tons. So.
Yeah, fair enough.
Yeah.
And a lot of the anchoring is in the chain, not the anchor.
Totally.
That's what I'm told.
Totally.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I did hear another anchoring story. There was a huge naval ship that anchored in a storm, and so they put out as much chain as they could, which is a lot. You can imagine on a navy frigate or whatever. And they rode out the storm, and then the next day they were staying at anchor, so they sent divers down to check on the anchor, navy kind of stuff, you know. And the guys went down, and they got down there, and they found that the chain was ranged in a big loop right round like this to the anchor, and the anchor was stood on its head. Yeah. The anchor was doing nothing. It landed on the seabed, stood up, hadn't gone down, and it was the chain that had been holding the frigate the whole night. Yeah.
We went to Tunisia we left the boat there when we went back to New Zealand, and we stopped at Lampedusa on the way. The water was just crystal clear. We're in about 3 meters, and I went for a swim, and I went down and had a look, and there was just a gentle swell coming through, and also it was quite windy, and I could just see the chain, like reasonably windy, just pulling backwards and forwards across, and every time it pulled across, a whole lot of fish would come darting in to get whatever had been unsettled. But you could absolutely see there was no tension after about probably 4 or 5 meters of chain in the sand to the anchor. You know, exactly. it was just as soon as you moved it in that sand, there'd be enough tension there to stop the bow going, and it would come back. And then do the same the other way. It's 100% right. It's the chain doing the work.
It's interesting, isn't it? It's interesting science.
Yeah, but you've still got to set the anchor.
Oh, absolutely. You know, ultimately,
you get that big wind.
Yeah, ultimately, that is your absolute safety net, isn't it? Yeah, exactly that. Exactly that.
And I always do it with the sounder on. So I'm looking very carefully as I'm coming into where I'm going to anchor, and usually tootle around a little bit. Just to see that I'm definitely in sand or mud, and you haven't got outcrops that you can wrap the chain around. And because when you're on your own, you know, I've spent a lot of time solo on the boat. You know, things like that can just get really complicated.
Actually, that's kind of my worst nightmare, is drop an anchor and then coming to bring the anchor up and finding it stuck. That's a
they got a great technique here, and I've learned to. I'm going to get a shackle. If they get, because they often get stuck here. They drop a shackle down the anchor line, the chain, and then a tender goes on the tied a rope, a line to it, and the tender's the opposite way, and that pulls that way.
Pulls it forward.
So
that's genius,
isn't it? And they do it here with a shackle about that big.
I love that.
So it's a shackle about that big.
So just to explain, if the anchor is that sort of shape and it's dug in that way, and you can't get the anchor up and the boat's pulling this way, it won't come up, you send a shackle down with a rope on it. That gets to there. But then with the rope, you pull it forward. So rather than the way it's been pulling, so you're pulling it out.
And it took them, they were hooked around one of these chains that goes across the seafloor. And those chains are like, you know, they're 50 mil thick shackles. And they got their hook under it. And he said what often happens is, with the tender and that, and the other boat going that way, they'll be able to lift it up enough to get a line around the tip of the anchor then. Because obviously sometimes you can't pull it out because the shackle's up the top end of the anchor. And you can get a line around it and just trip it.
I like that.
He said they do it here all the time.
That's really interesting.
And they don't charge you.
I've learned something.
They don't charge you. Good.
That's great.
Good.
That's really good. So you've gone through the Med, you've come up, you're now on the south coast of England.
And love it.
And where's next?
Okay,
what's the plan?
Well, the plan. What I said to my kids is, Dad's going to be selfish for 5 years.
Right.
So I've given myself 5 years to get home.
Okay.
And the idea is to get to the UK. Fiona's from Holland. So she'd love to spend some time in Holland.
Brilliant.
So we're going to go up round to the Thames, hopefully up to London and back.
Nice.
And then across to Antwerp. And yesterday I did my ICC and my 70 test.
Okay.
So I've got those licenses now. Because over 15 metres in the inland waterways, you've got to have a 70 licence. And so we're going to go through the canals, through The Hague to Amsterdam.
Wow.
And around Arnhem, which is where Fiona's family's from. Probably spend the winter there. So just to backtrack a bit, the one thing I learnt this winter was that next winter I want to be based somewhere. So when you're coming up that Atlantic coast and into the Bay of Biscay, there's a lot of uncertainties. And a couple of places I got to that I thought were very safe anchorages turned out not to be. So what I want to do this year is base myself somewhere. When you get the beautiful weather, get off and do something. But know I've got somewhere safe to come home to.
That makes a lot of sense.
So we'll do that in Holland. And then in the perhaps early spring, mid-spring, I have to see what the weather's like, to head up through the Kiel Canal and into Sweden.
Right, yeah.
And then next summer through the Caledonian in Scotland.
Okay, brilliant.
And then up the Western Isles.
That is spectacular, I'm told. In fact, I did a meet the owner with a guy with a Fleming 55.
Yeah.
And I'd recommend watching that video because he had got a load of video that he let me have to use when we talked about the trip. Oh my God, it's like the Caribbean.
Yeah.
It's, you would not believe, if I hadn't seen it, you sit there and you talk and say, oh yeah, it's absolutely beautiful and crystal clear beaches and all that, but oh, it was staggering.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to that.
Yeah.
So next summer, hopefully there, maybe pop down to Northern Ireland.
Right.
It's so close.
Yeah.
And then after that, the next year, I want to head up to the Shetlands, Faroes, Iceland, Greenland, and then over to Newfoundland.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
Brilliant. Okay.
So, and then down the intracoastal waterway towards Panama. I want to go to Cuba.
Right. Excellent.
Through the Caribbean to Panama.
Yeah.
I went through the Panama Canal when I was 6. Mum and Dad took us back to England to see the family. Yeah.
Okay.
It's just something I want to do.
Yeah. Do you remember it?
I think I remember the photos.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not. When I go on a commercial boat, there's a very familiar smell.
Right. Yes.
Yeah,
yes.
that diesel paint.
Yeah.
Is something familiar about it.
Yeah.
But it's just something I've wanted to do.
Yeah.
After Panama, I don't know.
Right.
I don't know. I've got to decide then. Do I just go across the Pacific, or up to the Pacific Northwest and over and down through Asia? I don't know.
That would be quite something, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
Go to Asia.
Yeah, it's just too well. Except that I want to cross an ocean.
Okay. Yes, of course.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I feel
Yeah.
like, what's it feel like to set off knowing for 20 days you're not going to see land again?
Yeah. Wow.
You know, whereas if you go that way, that you don't do that again.
Yeah. Of course.
Yeah.
Wow.
So that's the plan, and you know, who knows what's going to come along the way as to whether we can fulfil it. But at the moment, my head's get through Panama, and then we'll revisit. We're getting very close to that buoy there. Look, we've got a couple of seagulls watching us.
Yes, they are.
Yeah. They're quite tight spaces for anchoring. I'm surprised they actually let boats anchor here, to be honest.
Do you know what? They still have a regatta here, but they used to have an air show, and it was spectacular.
I bet.
And the red arrows would fly through here.
Yeah.
But this would be an absolute. There's so many boats anchored.
I'll be mayhem.
Yeah. And it looked like you could walk from boat to boat. I mean, obviously you couldn't, but they were so packed with anchored boats. I could never quite believe it. We used to come around with my boat and had it in Torquay at the time, and it was staggering the amount of boats. You'd have probably 100 boats anchored in here.
Yeah. In the Mediterranean, that was the thing that amazed me. Often I get friends on the boat, and when you start anchoring, they go, "Oh, are you happy to be that close?" I said, "You want to go to the Mediterranean? It'll be half that distance."
Yeah.
And it is just amazing how you just seem to slip past each other.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, everything mostly hangs the same way, doesn't it?
Yeah.
You know, because the wind that's affecting you is also affecting him. I mean, the boats are sometimes a little bit different, you know, and boats for keels will be affected more by tides and so on. But then there isn't much.
And I noticed the weight too. Like a yacht will turn a lot quicker with the change in tide.
Yes.
You know, because it's lighter.
Yeah.
And the keel, like you say, the keel's deeper.
Yeah.
But and often we won't, so they can come towards you and you feel like you get it, but you just never seem to quite touch. You know?
Yeah.
Brilliant. Yeah.
Well, that is amazing. And then finally, we'll just touch on very, very briefly. You've got a YouTube channel.
I have.
And you're documenting this entire trip.
Yep. So the plan was, it was really interesting, the whole story. I wanted to keep a record for myself.
Yeah.
And I thought, if I don't edit it as I go, then I'm never going to get round to editing it.
If you went home with all that, forget it.
Exactly. And then I thought at the same time, how do I keep it in chronological order?
Yeah.
And of course, YouTube does that perfectly.
Yeah.
So I did it, and I thought, family and friends will watch it.
Yeah.
And I mean, I haven't got a lot of fun. I think I've got 13,000 now, but you know, it's growing.
Yeah, of course it is.
And honestly, I have felt so supported by the community that's out there. I had a fisherman on board today for a cup of coffee.
Yeah.
From here, he's a crab fisherman.
Right.
And he came up to the boat and said, "I'm watching your channel, mate."
Oh, wow.
And the other day in town here, a guy just walks up to me and shook my hand and said, "Hey, great to meet you." And I mean, just lovely people.
It is great, isn't it?
Yeah.
And the community that you build, and I found that,
you know,
obviously with mine as well. And you know, when I'm somewhere, people come up and say, "Really love your channel," and it's always a buzz, isn't it?
Well, it is, and I'm a bit when I do something, I've got a little bit hooked on it now. I just want it to do better.
Yeah.
You know, and I mean, the hardest thing for you must be that, like, I answer every message.
Yeah.
But you couldn't.
No, I do. I don't answer every message, but I read every message, and I answer them if there is something to be answered.
Good on you. So I've answered as much as I know.
Yeah.
every single message that's come up. You know, and I look at some channels and I go, people put that effort into writing a message, but how could they possibly answer them all, you know? But, oh, that's good, that's great.
No, I do.
Read them all.
Every morning, first thing when I wake up.
Exactly what I do.
Yeah, right, let's go through the messages from last night, and then in the evening as well, sometimes during the day.
So I finish at 7, you finish at 10, reading yours.
Yeah, something like that, yeah. But I do try and read. I mean, sometimes I'll reply and then somebody will reply to that and I don't see it because it doesn't.
No, it doesn't come to the top of it.
No. But yeah, I really try and I'm mostly successful. I would say I've read 90% of the messages on my channel. So.
The big thing for me with the channel is I was looking for a channel when we decided to buy the boat, and I found there wasn't something out there that really met my needs of trying to understand what it would be like to be on your own, but also to be taking a boat like this around the world.
Yeah.
And I've been determined with the channel to be absolutely open and honest. If I make mistakes, I don't edit them out. I ran aground, that was on my channel. You know, I fell off the tender, that was on my channel. I lost my tender, that was on it. Because I want people to learn, you know. And like I've learned.
Yeah, I saw the shipping lanes.
Oh yeah, the shipping lanes.
People went mad over that, didn't they?
Well, what was amazing is I'd looked at it from the point of view of me crossing it.
Yeah.
And what people said was 100% right, because the other people using it have a right to assume you're doing the right thing.
Of course.
I was wrong.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
But I made that mistake.
That's how you learn.
Oh, you never stop learning on a boat.
No.
Yeah, no, absolutely not. I've learned so much.
Someone said to me once, show me a man who's never made a mistake and I show you a man who's never done anything in his life. And it's exactly right, isn't it?
Yeah, and I've got a couple of little dings in the boat where I've just touched a dock or something and I've just I got upset at the time, but now my attitude is like buying a brand new car, you're going to scratch it eventually.
Yeah, and once you have, you don't worry about it so much, do you?
Yeah, well you're just going to do it, you know, like it's, No, I'm thoroughly enjoying it. I miss home a little bit, but you know, I want to do this, and it's the sort of last, probably, in many ways, real big adventure you can have in life. Travelling the seas.
There's no freedom like there is out there. There's no speed limits. There's no cameras. There's nobody watching over you. That's what I find. And you head out the harbour or you head out the river. You are out there, and you're free. You know, in a way that you're not anywhere else. You know, even if you're in the air, yes, you've got loads of places you can go, but it's all obviously and quite rightly very tightly regulated.
Yeah, and it's not. I have been amazed how like the concept that someone with very little boating experience can actually go and pick a boat up in Turkey and take it all the way back to New Zealand without really being asked a question by anybody is kind of scary, but.
Yeah, you know, but the truth of the matter is, though, that if it was a problem, they'd have done something about it. So clearly it isn't.
I guess,
you know, and you're kind of proof of that because you've gone and done it, and you've had little issues. But you know what? The thing I always say, people say it's ridiculous that you can buy a boat and you can drive it without a license. And so forth. And I say, I understand what you're saying, but you have to have a license to drive a car. And look how many bloody idiots are on the road. That doesn't prove anything. In fact, in some ways, it's a bad thing because people get a license and go, that's it. I can drive. I'm brilliant. I'm done. You know, whereas with the boat, you don't do that. And you're always learning.
I mean, the grounding that I had in Portugal, I'm actually pleased now it happened because it's just changed my whole approach. You know, like you know, in the past, I've been going almost a year by then, and you see something and you think, that's okay, I'll keep going. Now, if I see something and I go, what's that? I just go, no, stop. Work it out, take your time. So, you know, I'm hope it's probably stopped something potentially a lot worse happening.
For sure.
My
favourite grounding story, I went round, I had a smaller boat than this, I had a Monterey 218, which is a cuddy cabin 21 footer, and a good friend of mine was down, and we went round to Teignmouth, which is a river just a bit further on down the coast, and there's a pub halfway up this river called Coombe Cellars, and I thought it'd be great if we could go to Coombe Cellars. It was about half tide, rising tide. The channel's marked round under the bridge, and then above the bridge there's nothing. There's nothing at all. There's nothing on the chart, and it's all relatively flat anyway. And I thought, that'd be fine. We'll just head on. We'll follow the moored boats. We'll put the moored boats where it's deepest. And we followed the moored boats, and that was fine. And then they ended, and we carried on. And my friend said to me, he said, "Those seagulls in front of us." I said, "Yeah."
He's standing.
He said, are they swimming or are they standing? And as he said it, we went, like that, and stopped.
It's a sickening feeling.
Yeah. Oh dear. So I went out and I got the anchor. It was a small boat, so it was a manual anchor. And I threw the anchor out of the front and it went splat and sticking out the mud.
Wow.
And we just had to sit there and wait for the water to come in, and eventually we floated off, and I gave up at that point. We came back, but
it's sobering.
It is.
It hurts your pride.
But we've all done that. We've all been there,
totally.
So
Yeah. And you get to a point in life too where, you know, it's up to people what they think about you. You know, I'm going to be honest. I'm going to put the story out there. Yeah. And I just hope people enjoy. Well, they are. I'm getting great comments. Yeah. So
that's fantastic.
Yeah.
Mark, that has been absolutely brilliant. Let's just mention the channel one last time.
Awanui NZ.
Spelt AWANUINZ.
And the Awanui is in Maori, big river.
Right.
And I figure all the oceans are a big river. Yeah. And they're going to head home to New Zealand. So.
Fantastic. Yeah. And that's the name of the boat as well.
Yeah, Awanui NZ.
Of course. Yeah.
It's been an
absolute pleasure. It's been really interesting. It's been lovely after going to so many Nordhavns to actually see one in the wild being used as it's intended, because that's what these boats are built for.
Oh, they are. So and they do it well. They do it well.
Fantastic. Well, there we go, guys. I hope you've enjoyed that. We will look forward to seeing your comments. Do follow Mark's channel. It's absolutely fascinating. And we'll look forward to catching you on another Meet the Owner very soon. Take care. Bye-bye.
Thank you.